Boom, hey internets, great question up above. So I get into this a lot, especially when I'm getting interviewed. This past year, I spoke at ISS, or the Impressions Expo. So this topic comes a lot with people who are inside of the trade. Also, if you don't know, let me qualify. I owned a high volume screen printing shop for over 3 years. Earlier than that, people don't know this, I worked at a screen printing shop. And so on the other side of things, being a designer and being a creative director at different clothing brands, domestic printables is a huge part of your income. It's a huge part of your product base, right? So nowadays, in fact, if I'm looking at the makeup, right, the anatomy of different apparel companies, whether that's merch for an influencer, band, musician, etc., or an actual clothing line, a good portion of it, I would say upwards of 70% is printables. Okay, so let me begin with that so we could get that out of the way. So should you guys clear room in the garage for a screen printing shop? I can feel my former business partner laughing now about this. So we used to talk about this quite a bit. So let me walk you through it. There's YouTube channels that are just people screen printing and having their production, and there's a lot of how-tos so you can learn to do the production on your own. So I don't think it's a bad idea. If you look at some of my other videos, my answer is straight up no, don't do it. So let me explore both sides. While I think it's really cool to have your own setup, right? I mean, if you've done production already, you're thinking, wow, how much money do I give my printer? And I can save that money by just getting my wholesale blanks and printing it all myself. And then maybe you're thinking you have more control over the production, more control over mistakes as well might be a motivation as well. So all of those are very valid. So if those are big concerns, you might lean towards getting your own shop, or I should say doing your own production at home. So I mentioned the shop because this is the next thing. If you start telling friends and family that you're doing a shop, or if you actively advertise like, hey, I'm gonna be able to do your shirts, whether that's maybe another friend's merch, or you do all the PE uniforms for the local high school and middle school, and then you start to expand that business, the big danger is that you start doing this side hustle that becomes more than a side hustle, and no one is gonna print for 10 hours and after that say, oh, what should I do with my clothing line now? Or let me go print my own stuff. Now, if you begin very focused, like I say, if you begin with the end in mind, if you begin with the focus of knowing starting my garage shop is so that I can print my own stuff, and then that will dictate what kind of work you take in otherwise. Know what I'm saying? It will dictate whether you take that extra gig printing this band's merch or what have you, so that in the end of the day you have enough energy to still focus on your clothing company, right? On your label, on your merch, on any of that stuff, all right? And so that can get very daunting and it can get very stressful, right? And it becomes very overwhelming, not only mentally, but physically. I mean, you're physically pulling screens, right? I'm assuming no one's gonna buy an auto, right? In their first month of trying to do their own shirts because there's no need for it. You're gonna have a manual press and you're gonna get the electricity fixed in your garage so it could get the right voltage to cure your prints, to dry your prints, right? And all of that. So it's a big operation to sacrifice or to save that money, right? Unless you know how big it's gonna scale. But let me say this, at one point you're definitely going to outsource to a bigger company, right? To a bigger screen printing company. And if you quote with them, you're probably gonna get really decent pricing. Right now, I don't always say go with the cheapest, I go with the right company. So you should have 3 companies in mind just in case one drops the ball, which happens. I owned a shop, we definitely dropped the ball before, or it had too much spoilage. There's a lot of reasons why you should have backup screen printers. But at some point, if the main thing is the main thing of growing the company, you should get to the point where it's inconvenient and in fact, it's not the best use of your time to screen print your own shirts. So then you would just outsource it to the bigger shop, right? And then keep smaller things, maybe smaller collabs, or you're testing out a design that you don't think is gonna sell a lot. You can still do that all in-house, right, in your garage. But focusing on the main thing to keep the main thing is what I would say. So many people have asked me this. I've even had people that wanted to do brands start a shop and they tell me literally 2 years later that I was right about everything I'm telling you. All of that happened and they're like, I completely forgot about the brand, or I kind of gave up on the brand, or they got, you know, engulfed in screen printing and then eventually hated to do that as well. And so that kind of killed their drive there. But in earlier videos, that's why I say don't do it. But if you think you can stay focused, you should do it, or you can do it if you want. I still err on the side that I would not start my own production shop for screen printing. Now, let me add a caveat. This is the big update. as you know on my channel, I deal with super color and transfers. That is a great way to have a shop where there's not so many moving parts. When you're doing screen printing, right, you have the screens and the film, the emulsion, right? So you gotta bake it all and put the screen together correctly. That's a science in itself. You gotta load it on, right, to the press. You gotta get your t-shirts ready, and then you gotta pull the ink, the plastisol. You gotta clean that all up after. So there is literally probably, I don't know, if we break it all down, there's gotta be like 15 to 20 steps there. Transfers are a lot easier. There's a cost. It's a very comparable cost. You know, get a good heat press. So working with a company like Supercolor to do your transfers is actually a great idea if you're gonna do a home production. And then you can still use screen printed shops for anything that has multiple hits, and you can keep your equipment on a very minimal. So you only need a fraction of the space. So that's the only other thing that I would offer for home production is take a look at Supercolor and take a look at transfers and launching a brand like that. If you go to Supercolor's social media, you'll see a couple case studies of success rates for clothing brands that way. So if you're not interested in any of that though, I still think doing it the traditional way of outsourcing a shop is a great idea, because there's always going to be a multitude of shops that you can price check with and see who will do the best job for you and your brand. Part 2 of this is going to be, should established screen printing places start a brand? If that's you, look out for that. So thumbnail for that looks like this, and I'll put the link for that below once it publishes. So if that interests you and you're seeing this in the future, check out the link below. Like, subscribe, please do me a favor. If you have a comment, question, drop it all down below. You could always text me at this number as well. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.